Just
Absolutely.
like that one guy, Jim Cantore. We really, really appreciate all that you do. You stay safe. And remember, if security starts beating your ass, keep those cameras rolling, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Bud Patches, just talking about news.
All right, Jason, we ready to kick off the show?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not good at this. I'm not Ryan. So
Let's
I'm
just
going to
do
hit
it.
a button.
Oh. Hello and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security Talking Bout News. In this episode, we're going to be talking about CISA, we're going to be talking about big IP, we're going to be talking about malicious Android apps. Russia's going to show up, Colonial Pipeline's going to make an appearance. We're going to talk about exploit dev and releasing exploits, penalizing. It's a lot to get started working on in just an hour. On this particular edition of Talk About News, I am joined by Serena, who still does not have her official computer from Black Hills Information Security. I am also joined by Ralph, BSD Bandit, Yip Yip, and Mubix, and Corey, who we just spent way too much time together last week in San Diego at Wild West Hacking Fest. As always, this is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security. If you're afraid that you've been hacked, you would like to be hacked ethically and legitimately, or you would like to help pretend that you're not going to get hacked, please contact Black Hills Information Security for all your hacking needs. And for training, be sure to check out Antisyphon. Let's get started. I'm going to kick out the first news story. This is CISA's Shields Up. I just put it in the private chat for everybody. I need to just kind of get this out. You know, I've been kind of bitching about CISA saying these are the top 170 vulnerabilities that everyone needs to start patching against as quickly as possible. And I hate that. I don't know if this is much better.
It's like 600 now, just so you know.
It's now 600. Just these vulnerabilities, that's it, executives like to say. But in this particular news story, they basically kind of went away from, hey, here's the patches that you should put in place. And instead, they basically said, here's the things you should do to protect your organization. And really, it just seems like the basics of a security policy, like enable two-factor authentication, patch your stuff, disable administrative interfaces, basically all the stuff that organizations should have been doing for years. I don't know. Does this actually help organizations, or is it just too much data, too much motherhood and apple pie, not enough like right direction, or is it just the right amount of direction? What do you all think?
I'll take apple pie for 100, John.
All right, let's go with apple pie then.
So I think it's really good because now we have, I mean, the NIST standards are really long, and it's really like to get management or anyone to look at a NIST standard to say, hey, this is a standard we have to match or meet. It goes to governance, and then like it never comes back, right? And then or we put it into policy and it never does anything. The cool thing about Shields Up, I think, is that it's a very easy to consume, like one pager sort of, that I can say, hey, the US government tells us we need to do this, and it's a lot easier to get, you know, the ball rolling. And I think that one of the things about CISA doing this is that smaller organizations like you know, municipalities or you know, county offices that have one person doing all of IT, not just security, this is a way for them to have some oomph going into getting budget or fixing things. So while it might be security standard for a lot of us right now, like as security professionals, we see larger organizations who can afford pen tests or stuff like that, that these smaller places, the IT shops that don't have that, this gives them that stick to get that budget to get those things done.
So kind of going with that, I mean, so you would basically say like the value in this isn't necessarily that security teams are going to be like, oh, I get it now. But basically it's really, really, really simple, one page. It's a way of getting management kind of to understand, like, we don't have to say, we think that this is a good idea. We can literally go to like show CISA and say, this is what the government's telling us to do. We should at least do that. Right.
Yep, exactly.
I think that's like a really good point. From my experience working in production environments, there's usually a few different constraints. One would be downtime. So people don't want to do the migrations or upgrades because of downtime. The second would be budget constraints. And maybe people, and budget constraints meaning they can't put in new equipment that maybe their current equipment is end of life, end of support, so they can't have upgrades, things like that. So that, I think that is a great way of being able to say, hey, we need budget to replace these things because we can't update them anymore, and this is going to be a problem.
And I think it's interesting, Rob, you had brought up like some of these standards are so voluminous. I noticed Huntress is pushing a whole bunch of advertising. And Huntress is a good company. I really, really like Huntress and John Hammond and everything that they're doing there. But they're really pushing the NIST standards. And I feel uncomfortable anytime anyone is like, all you have to do is NIST this crap. And it's just, have you read the 853, which actually references about 95 other NIST standards? I know you have, right? But it's just like, it's so hard to, there's no place to like hook into it. It becomes overwhelming whenever it comes to prioritization.
This reminds me of like a pen test report, basically, but just for everyone. It's like if you had to write a generic pen test report that just applies to every company somehow. You're like, all right, here's a pen test report, target, report, client, all companies. Here's
Evidence.
the findings. Here's the findings I would write. And not to say anything negative about it, because it is like, it's nice to have one page, and there's cool graphics. I mean, that shield with an arrow pointing up. I mean, come on.
That's pretty cool.
Amazing.
I always thought it was like Steve. No, what was that guy's name that was running the website Shields Up, and he had that. Was it Gibson? Steve Gibson.
Yeah,
right?
Steve Gibson. GOC.
Yeah.
And it kind of looks like his logo. So I always get confused. People are like, "Look at this awesome stuff from Shields Up," and I'm waiting for like Plate Spin to give me recommendations on how we can improve the performance of my hard drive. This is a really old series of references for you all. But some of us get it.
But yeah, at the same time, I mean, some of these things, it's like, oh, just ensure that software is up to date. All right, hold on. That creates 800 subtasks. Or like, confirm that all personnel have disabled ports and protocols that are not essential for business purposes. Okay, that's a 6-month project. We'll get back to you. Like,
you said 6 months?
Sorry, 6-year project.
There you go.
All right.
So it is, but it's nice to have a pen test report that applies to every company. It's like, we didn't do a pen test for you, but CISA did, basically. Here, it's like an email I would send to a client. They're like, what should we do? I'm like, well, everything. Here's a list, right?
Yeah. So, all right, moving on. Let's talk about pen test reports, because that kind of triggered me a little bit.
Oh, it's triggered.
It hurt. So the next story is the big IP vulnerabilities. I mean, there was multiple vulnerabilities that were patched and were released. The one that we're the most interested in is an authentication bypass in the administrative interface, which I think has a score of a 9.8. We're constantly waiting for like the 10 point.
Man, what do you need to get a 10? You know,
I already said if you pay for like CVE Platinum, you just are.
Yeah, you always get a
9.8. It's like you pay for the subscription. They're like, we'll never give you a 10, but 9.8.
Anything other than that, right? So this one I think is interesting because I think it was last week I was arguing with another customer, and with most of you on this call, I've talked to you about pen test reports where we say publicly accessible administrative interfaces, and we've kind of go all over the place on the pen test report. Sometimes we put medium and sometimes it's informational, and the customers always push back. God damn it. Every time this happens where there's an administrative interface, I feel a little bit justified. And I'm thinking at BHIS that if your administrative interface is exposed to the open internet, I'm just going to start making it a high. And I wanted to get you all's opinion on that, because it seems to me like it's an easy fix that you can shut it down, and it makes a lot of these vulnerabilities go away. Johannes from the SANS Institute, it was interesting. He had a quote. He said, usually I tell people to patch the damn thing, then make configuration changes. But in this situation, I'm going to recommend the opposite. I recommend that you make the configuration changes, close off the administrative interface, and then install the patches for it. So what do you all think? Like I said, I'm thinking about just making this a freaking high because there's a ton of these vulnerabilities coming out.
I don't know if
Well, off the rip, it should be a high. I mean, literally, it's exposed to the internet, and it's an admin interface. That should be a high off the rip. And two, again, and I totally agree. Disable it first, then patch it, and then for verification purposes, after it's patched, make sure that admin console, and just for sanity reasons, make sure that admin console has not been re-enabled after the patch has been applied. Because I mean, we've seen that before too, where you patch something and a service gets turned back on.
That's a good point. Now, Serena, you've probably spent more time than any of us on administrative interfaces on different customer networks over the years. Do you have any idea, like if you're thinking percentage, how many of the customers that you've seen actually have these things exposed to the open internet? And you've just kind of been like, oh God, I can't believe they did this again.
Honestly, not many at all. Like that's kind of why I am with you in saying this is high, because I would like to see the arguments of why they would need their management interface on the open internet. There's not really good reasons, at least that I've heard so far, that justify the risk. And so yeah, I would agree. I think this is high. You shouldn't have any of those management interfaces facing the open web.
And I honestly don't think it has anything to do with how hard it is. I think it's just them trying to get the overall rating for their pen test report or assessment report down. Like that's all that they care about. They're like, well, we noticed that you got us at a high, found these admin interfaces. And really, how often has that ever been exploited? I think this helps answer those.
So I do have a little bit of context. I'll play the devil's advocate here, right? I agree that like a lot of admin interfaces should not be exposed, right? There's like lots of reasons why. But, you know, on the flip side, right? I mean, Office 365, right? Your SharePoint administration interface is open too if you just have the right credentials, right? But I think it comes to like that authentication portal being designed for more of an open internet face than, you know, the other, applications that we're talking about that were never really designed or hardened to be in that environment, right? And you know, anytime you have an administrative interface open, interface in general, you should be asking yourself, do I need this publicly exposed? Like, what is the business case that requires this? And you know, 99.9% of the time, you can use some other kind of VPN or other authentication mechanism to limit your risk.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of companies are going with Cloudflare and using some of their utilities to restrict access to those interfaces. Because, I mean, if we do come back to it and we say, hey, this is an administrative interface and you need to shut it down, almost every company that's running in Azure is just going to be like, how?
I mean, is there another switch I need to turn on? Like, I don't get it, right? So
enable Defender.
Enable Defender.
It's fine.
So
I will say I one situation I've observed a lot on clients is it's like an ISP device that they don't have control over. They're like, yeah, our traffic flows through it, but we can't log into it. And I'm like, well, it has exposed telnet on the internet. And they're like, it's whatever. It's just but so that might be a scenario if it's like someone deployed this for you and you don't have control, it's time to reach out to that person or ISP or whoever they are and be like, it's a 9.8. Now you can finally listen to us, please.
Yeah. So Rob, you were going to say something.
Yeah, sorry. So I agree that in general a management interface warrants a high, but I think that this F5 interface is specifically the exploit, the authentication bypass, which goes past any kind of authentication, as it says, warrants way more than that. So for a lot of reasons, one in particular is this is an appliance, right? So one of the things about appliances is that very rarely do you monitor them, right? Like you don't have an EDR on your appliance. If someone exploits this bug, they're going to be in that system forever, like unless there's a full firmware update, right? So this is even worse from my point of view. Appliances are even worse than like a 0 day in Chrome or a 0 day in, even SMB for that matter, because at least I know that I can clean up something on Windows, right? I can, for the most part. But like if it's on an appliance, I won't know it's there. Like if someone's exploited this, there's way too many ways to like stay in and get in and stay in. And you have to rely on like web logs or whatever F5 or any other whatever management service on that system, on that appliance gives you. Like I think it was.
Wait a minute though. That brings up a logging question.
Mhm.
Seriously, I know that this is kind of weird, but how many of our customers have we actually seen have logging on these types of devices enabled?
So I bet you a lot have logging for, so F5 is a load balancer, right? So you get the logs from everything coming in to the load balancer. That doesn't include the management interface.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
there are login logs, like, you know, on the device itself. But a lot of these appliances are managed through some type of third-party, you know, system like ICE. You could, you know, I've seen lots of F5s integrated in with ICE for authentication.
But they have that capability. But how often have we seen organizations actually having those logs sent somewhere to manage them?
Very rarely.
And not a lot.
And that's like F5 does have the ability to log the management logs. But a lot of like other appliances don't, right? You'll never, or you used to, I don't know anymore, but like you used to not even have, like if you had Carbon Black, right? You didn't have any logs of who was logging in and when. Like, so if someone exploited your cloud instance of Carbon Black, someone could get root access to any system they want and you'd have 0 logs for it. Like as security professionals, right? And tools that we use, we have to start holding, those appliances, those devices accountable for the things that we do on them as well. And so getting back to the F5 though, this management interface can be listening on 8100, 8443, 8443, and I think the other one I've seen is like 443. So you can have the management interface listening and not even know it. So, and I don't quite agree with BSD Bandit where he's saying turn off the interface because like how am I going to manage the system if it's off?
But you can do things like firewall rules. You can do things like, you know, Cloudflare. You can do some level of protection on it. I agree. Just shutting it off completely can be very, very, very difficult, but you can at least restrict it. Serena, you were going to say something?
Go ahead.
Oh, never mind. I was just thinking, if you were talking about shutting off the management interface from a like outside perspective, like for it not being facing the open web. I mean, as long as you can still log in with your credentials on like a VPN or whatever, that should be fine. The other thing about logs is their logs will be saved locally until it rolls over, and typically local logs are it saves a lot if you're just talking about like admin login, which I would say most of the time is probably all you'll see as a local login because you should be, you know, doing authentication through some other method aside from a local login besides admin. So you should be able to log into that device and at least see logs stored on that local device if there was a login.
And
this is, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in BSD Bandit, just to clarify, I think that this is kind of what you meant, not just like shutting it down completely, but like restricting.
No, kind of restricting access. But
let's clarify restricting access though. Just getting it off the internet is not enough. If it's on your local network or your corporate network, that is still bad. Like this is root access. If I fish you and find an F5, I have root access. Like that's still bad.
I'm going to go with less bad, but I think it's debatable how much less bad it actually is.
Well, I mean, one of the other things we got to think about too is how many of the recent breaches we've seen from partners, where it's like how many of those partners are part of your local network that don't have any of the other controls that you've got that to detect these things. Like I've got the F5 big IP page up right now for indicators of compromise and whatnot. Look at it, they're recommending all the same things we're talking about. But even if you're restricting that management interface just to your network, how many people legitimately have access to your network? And do you know what those people are doing?
Right.
It's a good question. Yeah.
Well, they will patch it, at least for the newer versions of the appliance. It'll be patched.
Yeah, I'm going to go say something contentious. Scorecard. to start pushing that exact narrative and basically talking
I
about how
got
they
one more thing about.
Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry.
Mhm.
I got one more thing about patching. So the F5s themselves are load balancers, right? They're balancing the load on your web applications. So we have to be also empathetic on patching these things, because you take this down, you might be taking down your revenue for the entire company.
Yeah.
Right. So resiliency and duplicate systems to patch one while one's offline, that's all super important. If you don't have that, then it's going to take you a while to patch. And even though the patch is out, like, we have to be a little empathetic when it comes to getting this thing fixed.
Yeah,
Well, Rob,
I think for these types of things, like I think the group, I can't remember the name of the research company. Rob, you probably know them, but one of the security research firms actually has a proof of exploit that they're planning on dropping next week, which I love it. They're like, we're going to give people a week head start to patch. I'm like, oh, that's good.
Oh wow.
Oh, it's the proof of concept's already out. It was out this weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was?
That was the big news.
I think with Big IP though, you're able to update that without having any downtime, but I'd have to double check. So I know that's like a big, thing. If you need to do an emergency change window, I think you're able to update that management interface without.
Because I think they do live patching. I think it's like
Now, does every F5 administrator know that though?
no,
it's a
they
different
don't.
question.
There's also
I
a
assure you.
problem, sometimes that I've seen with F5 and oversubscription. So if you have a load balancer that is oversubscribed, maybe has too many, too many rules or different things like that, it can be a problem when you go to reboot it and it might not boot back up. And I've seen that more specifically with people that do like SaaS or any type of hosting where they have a ton of different people coming in and out. So that is something to consider as well. I mean, it might be more of a corner case, but that's still going to be happening.
Yeah, if you're
Still.
losing $1 million revenue for the day it was down, you have a million reasons
Oof.
to get a better infrastructure together,
See,
right?
But this gets into this gets into like normalization and how we change the conversation in security, right? Because we have organizations that are so gun shy for patching, and they basically are saying things like, well, if we're down, then it's going to cost us this much. It's a 9.8. If you have to pick, and your executive team should pick, either A, you're going to patch this and there is a small chance of this creating downtime, or B, we don't patch and it's going to get popped like in the next week or so. We got to normalize the conversation of saying, let's take the risk with patching. I think that's where the industry has to start going. And I understand that that's a really simplistic, easy thing to say, but I feel like for a lot of us, graybeards, and I'm not talking about Ian in particular, but for a lot of us graybeards, when we came up like in the early years, things went down constantly from patches. It doesn't have as much. It absolutely does happen, but it doesn't happen as much as it used to. So we have to get better. And this brings up, we talked about it last week in the news when we were in San Diego. I still feel like most CISOs, their role in the company is to be the fall person for whenever a breach or something like this does happen, to basically create protections for the people up above them. This kind of ties into that whole entire thing of how we're going to be looking at security in the organizations moving forward, honestly.
Yeah.
I do have, and maybe this has been answered, I haven't done the research on it yet, but Big IP also works with Big IQ, which is their centralized system for if you have multiple load balancers like Big IP. Hopefully Big IQ doesn't have the same issues that Big IP is having. Does anybody know that at this point?
I don't know.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Because that could be worse. Potentially. I mean, hopefully it would not have that same issue, but because they're very, very similar products, aside from Big IQ is just the centralized where you hook up all of your F5s into that one central system and control all of your F5s from your centralized system. Because then you would just have access to one load balancer, you'd have access to the entire environment. And some people are running a lot of load balancers.
As the user wading through logs just said, how can we leverage AI to fix this?
You mean Wade, your co-Backstreet/Hackstreet Boys member?
Yeah, man.
Wade.
Yeah.
See how fast the band breaks up?
I
Wait.
know.
Well, there's been some drama in the Hackstreet Boys, but anyway.
Yeah, it's coming. We're gonna come back.
I do think it's a win that it says Sans estimates there's like 1,000 of these exposed. Like 5 years ago, that would have been like 20,000 or 50,000.
Right.
Like that's less than you would expect, in my opinion.
Just a note, John looks like he disappeared. So
Yeah.
He's probably got
Ralph,
abducted again.
Ralph, you're in charge now.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're screwed, guys. Bail.
Didn't I see from Sans that someone, at least someone from Sans on Twitter, saying that the number of exposed back in 2019 or the last vulnerability on iControl was 10,000 and it went up to 15,000. Like it's actually increased, not decreased.
The number of exposed online?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm just in the article. It specifically says Sans believes there are likely around 1,000 exposed devices. So.
I think there's way more than that.
Yeah, that's too slow.
I think they were being nice with that number.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's
I mean,
1,000 devices we've found so far.
that's a question for HD Moore. Get him on the show.
Get them on ASAP.
So, Serena, you had mentioned not having a chance to look at while you were talking. I pulled up that article and I pasted into the YouTube comments. I think you're 100% right. It does not require a reboot. However, even F5 mentions that you may want to still schedule a downtime window because there's a bunch of ARP and GARP announcements that might need to come back up and actually reconfigure. So you might actually lose connectivity. And I'll tell you right now, that's the one that is going to make people slow down. They're like, whoa, it's going to be unavailable. We're going to have to get engineers on the line, even if it's just a blip. But no, agree.
I mean, when I was doing maintenance windows and recommending fixes, I'd always 100% of the time say to have a window available just in case. I mean, 98% of the time it was fine unless you know that there is an existing issue, maybe like database corruption or, like I said before, oversubscription, because people like to push their F5s. They're pricey, right? So yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen, and I'd probably assume most people would not experience that. But doing it during a time of least congestion where not everybody's on the network would probably be the best option.
No, and I agree with you. I think that if it doesn't require a reboot,
Always wise.
you need to do it.
So go with that.
Oh, there's John.
Hey, I'm back.
Everybody, Dad's back.
I'm back.
Yeah, I threw my phone on the dash to get better cell phone reception, and then the sun came out and it cooked my phone.
Oh my!
Melted it.
Hey, like the internet goes down, and now I'm out in the middle of the woods by my my telco shed, trying to get my internet back up and waiting for Lumen out here because they're like, we're gonna send out a tech as soon as possible, and that's like 3 hours ago.
Oh my! Yeah.
Plus, how do you Google
battle
for
on the
anything?
bison now? We're getting them out there.
Yeah, we are.
The internet goes down. You can't Google how to fix the internet.
Yeah, it's the worst.
You're screwed. What are you gonna do?
I've got to do it on 5G networks. So the next story, how to cook a pixel. This one kind of bothers me too, and I can't speak to the specifics of it because BHIS was hired by Colonial Pipeline, but I can speak in general. There is a federal regulator. It's some kind of weird organization. PHMSA has proposed penalties for Colonial Pipeline of $986,000. It's the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Agency. Now, there's a couple of things about this that are a bit concerned for me. One, I personally have a fear if we start penalizing companies that get breached. I have a fear that a lot of organizations are just going to go dark and not talk about when they've been breached. The other thing is, with this particular situation, what the hell? I'll just speak. If I get in trouble, I get in trouble. So if we look at what the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, their job is to make sure that pipelines are safe. Colonial Pipeline saw that there was a breach on their network, and before it actually got to their OT network segments, they shut down. They basically did fail secure. And I don't understand. Like, sometimes I feel like these organizations are like, well, we have to do something. We have to blame. We have to impose fines. Are we going to start getting into where different organizations are trying to impose fines just to show that they're being tough on cyber breaches? Or does Colonial Pipeline deserve it? I can't quite speak to that one at all. But I do think it's interesting that what they've said publicly, we've seen on dozens of companies in the past few months. So I'd like to get your takes on the idea of fining companies that have been compromised.
Ooh.
Depends. Was there rules in place right now that they were already avoiding? Like, anytime I've seen PCI or any sort of, now PCI isn't a regulatory standard, it's a contractual standard, but it's one that most people know versus the, chemical safety, whatever. If they've had time to ramp up and they've been, given some sort of guidance that says these are the things that you must do to make sure that you're compliant with whatever standards we have, and you have this amount of time to do it, then yeah, absolutely fine them to the moon. If this is a reactionary function of we're going to fine you to show the others they need to do stuff, then no, I don't think it's really fair at all.
I feel like it's how do you appeal to the executives of these companies? Is the carrot or the stick
Money.
more effective? Right?
Money.
I mean, just to be honest, they already paid 4.4 mil in Bitcoin, so it's nothing. I mean, it's such a small fine, right? I mean, it's not.
Remember, they got some of that back. Remember, they got some
It's
of
a
that
small.
back.
It is a very small amount. I mean, for a large company, this is nothing. I mean, it is. I'm sure it's bigger than like the fines they're giving out for PCI. They're like, oh, all right, well, you have to pay for dinner next time. But basically, the the $100 or the near $1 million fine. I guess I don't know. Maybe someone with experience in this industry can tell me. But from my perspective, having worked with that, I feel like there is not a priority on security. I do agree with you, John, that like you don't want to just beat people up when they get hacked, because then they'll be like, I never got hacked. Nothing happened at all. But at the same time, maybe it'll get executives to kind of pay attention to the bottom line and be like, well, this is $1 million that just leaked out of our account because we screwed up. So
where does that $1 million go? Is there like a fund to help innocent ransomware victims or something?
Like,
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, what are they?
Commission.
Yeah, there's two sides of the fine, right?
It goes to a wallet.
They're going to establish their organization that no one's ever heard of. They're going to.
No, it's the Jared Zoolander fund for companies that don't, deal with security so good.
That don't do security good and stuff.
Yeah.
Do security good.
Yeah.
So Ehrlich Luras said, how do we hold companies accountable? Without some type of accountability, will anything change? I know the libertarians will say the free market will set this. I don't think that quite works with oil companies. But so how the hell do we start holding companies accountable across the board? Because I think, like, if you talked about PCI basically says if you're hacked, then therefore you are not PCI compliant, which is weird.
That's the easiest rule ever to make.
It's a little strange. So, but I think it's always easy because there's always a way in, right? There's always a way in. There's always a control that's going to fail. And I just really, really don't know. They're not fined because they were hacked, is because they didn't have procedures in place. Still, that's a pretty hefty fine for not having procedures. And once again, are we going to make that the standard? Companies don't have the right procedures because
does PG get fined when something catches on fire and it takes down half the Western Seaboard? No, they don't. I mean, maybe they do, but not like this, not publicly, and not very.
I don't know if fines are sufficient, because they could basically just put that fine in their budget. And that's what a lot of these companies do, is they're like, all right, we'll just add this to our budget. And just in case we get fined for this, because it's cheaper for them to pay that fine or add that fine to their budget than do the work to secure.
Yeah, Serena, you're 100% right, because that was the purpose with GDPR going to a completely different regulation where you can't arguably budget that in, because one of the highest tier fines is 1% of global revenue. If you're a Facebook, that like Facebook or other company, that stings. 1%, no matter what, stings.
That's
anything else.
GDPR.
You're right. They budget.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of people.
Their net income.
There's a lot of people saying that they properly the procedures to restore operations. And I find that funny too, because there are very, very few that can go that far shut down and come. I think it took them like a week, maybe a little bit less to come back. But I'm telling you, there's a ton of companies that would not recover very easily. Like,
well, are we encouraging that? Is that really something we're encouraging? Like, oh yeah, you got to plan for shutting down your whole network just in case.
Bring the whole thing back up. You know,
that's rinse and repeat, baby.
Right, but that, like, is that really what we're pushing companies? Like, don't worry about security. Just be ready to turn everything off and then turn it back on within a day.
There was a tweet I saw that was interesting. Someone said,
Oh, no.
basically, like, what's your procedures for restarting your? Well, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to domain controllers, and they're like, great, your domain VMware. Yeah, so we're going to bring up the domain controllers. Yeah. But in order to authenticate into VMware, you need to authenticate to the domain controller to start up VMware. And so what I'm saying is this is a lot more complicated. And I can totally see regulators that are like, well, duh, you should know how to do this. It's like, oh, it's so much more complicated than you think it is.
And it's not where we're training. It's not where we should be training companies.
Yeah. We have a solution. Did you know that? I have it in my hand. What we have here is the 2022 risk acceptance stamp. Now, if the management accepts the risk stamp, you can take whatever vulnerability you have behind, you take the stamp, you put it in the room, and boom, risk accepted. And that's it.
Nice.
Regulators can't come for you. No. Everything's fine. Hackers see this on the door.
They're not coming in.
Yeah.
You'd be like, management, what?
Yeah. I don't know if they can afford that with their revenue of $420 million, but maybe.
Yeah.
Or that was
I
their
will
profit.
sell this to them for half their fine.
Wow, what a bargain!
But only if it comes in every color, because I need it for different contrasting on different machines.
Oh, and you can turn it into an NFT and sell it, so you can get some of that revenue back.
Oh yeah, they can digitally.
There you go.
The risk.
Yeah. There you go.
That's how blockchain can help.
Yeah,
there you go. Look at that.
We need an Adobe plugin too, so we can sign it.
Did someone say NFT? Because I get summoned if someone does.
We need some NFT.
We're sorry, we got a little off track.
Yeah,
are you here to slap people around and be like, no, bad?
Oh my god!
All right.
So
the next story, I really like too. The Hacker News released this story that was basically another set of Joker-laced malware for mobile devices, which I'm holding mine in front of the air conditioning right now. So apparently, attackers are taking legitimate apps, downloading them that they can get source code, inserting malware, re-uploading it up to the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, and then convincing users to install it on their devices. And there's a couple of things that I like about this story. One, everyone should go see Cory Doctorow's presentation, The Coming War on General Purpose Computing, where he talked about how Microsoft and Apple want everybody to buy everything through their stores so they have complete control over it. And of course, their gig is, well, it's going to be more
secure
that way.
Yeah.
But the reality is they have better of the ads and the revenue coming off of it. This is a monkey's paw, I think, for Microsoft and Google and Apple. Be careful what you wish for. Because if they're like, it's going to be more secure, and you literally have millions and millions of apps getting loaded, the reality of implementing and monitoring the security across all of those apps is not trivial. In fact, if you look at the difficulty in just doing standard software security today, dispersed across, hundreds, thousands of companies, we still have vulnerabilities like BigFix's vulnerability that has tons of security engineers, and they're cracking good. So do we really think that Microsoft, Google, and Apple can actually go through and secure every one of their apps? So this makes me smile. Seeing tons of malware. I don't think it's something that Apple, Google, Microsoft can possibly get their hands around.
Isn't this why Apple's pulling all the old apps from their app store? There's like a whole cleansing they're doing right now on all these old apps. There was a big article about it, and this probably has to do with a lot of that, right? They're like, what? This thing has been updated in 10 years? What does this thing even do?
Well,
and obviously it's a
Yeah.
Obviously,
It's
it's
a
a
game.
what is it?
It's a
QR
game
scanner.
where you sling birds at pigs.
Frappy
What?
Birds.
Why would anybody buy that? That sounds boring. No, it's really addicting. So you slingshot
Top 10.
birds at pigs. I don't know, man. We better remove that. That sounds sketchy.
Sounds like
I do think you're right that like you
Yeah.
can't always vet everything that like malware makes it through, but at the same time this seems like a pretty egregious example because literally they just put like a sleep function after it was vetted like that. It's like guys, come on, that's like the number one thing you think of. You can't just be like sleep 9,000. Oh no,
yeah,
it's not
you
malware.
just have to, you have to go to 6 hours. That's how you get to win the sleep game.
Yeah,
There
we
you
tried
go.
running the app for 30 seconds and it didn't do anything. So I think it's fine. Just put it up.
Yes.
Like that's, I do think
Yeah.
Google is a little bit kind of on blast here for not catching this. And also it's a copy of another app. Like, dude, it's not that hard to run heuristics on the code and be like, that's weird. This code's 99% the same except for this one URL that's definitely not malware. Like, what's that about? Like,
Why?
I mean,
Why am I
Not
getting?
that hard.
Why am I getting smart contract vibes when you just said that?
yeah, exactly.
Oh
That's
yeah, identical,
That's a good
right?
point. Monitor, yeah, you could totally do it. Yeah, we talk about
It's
this on
all
the
the
crypto
same
podcast all the time.
scam,
You
just
can
different
monitor
Yes.
for
platform.
your code being used by other people, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's not impossible. But yeah, I mean, malware always makes it through, right? It's like life finds a way, like
Malware finds a way.
malware finds a way.
Yes.
That should be on a
God.
t-shirt.
Get the shirt really far. I'm not gonna go.
That should
Are
be
you
on a
Goldbluming?
t-shirt. Malware finds a way.
Well, there it is.
Well, there it is.
And then it could be like grass growing out of like cement.
Right. Yeah.
So John's already emailed me. I've already forwarded it to the graphic designer. We're working on
beautiful.
the
Malware finds a way. Oh my god.
I've
Are you
heard
thinking like
there's
a
someone
little?
backstage who wants in.
Yeah, we gotta let John back in, I think.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Welcome back, John. Welcome back.
John, we have a new shirt while you were
We have a
gone.
new t-shirt.
Yeah, we have a new
He's the one that
t-shirt.
emailed me.
T-shirt ideas aplenty.
I love the fact that this is my people aren't getting pissed off. They're not like, what's with this John Strand guy and his connection? There's a lot of people like, oh, this is what it was like in the before times, folks. It was like this all the time.
Oh, the early days.
Yeah. Malware always finds a way in.
Yeah.
That got me thinking about that.
But at the same time, Google could have done better, and they should do better. And it's not that
Do
hard to
better,
be like,
Google.
this is a 99% copy of another app and has one line added that's sleep 9,000, then execute malware. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that, right? Or it can be. But maybe it's sleep for like 2 hours and then execute. Who knows?
That's what I said. 6 is the magic number. You
I mean,
always
it
get in with 6
specifically
hours.
says that it just was designed to wait until the vetting period was over and then turn into malware. So,
Is there a
Look at what
published
we were
vetting
talking
period?
about.
Yes.
Look at what we were talking
my
about in San Diego. We were talking about VPN services, legitimate VPN services, and you literally become an open redirect proxy for other customers. Like,
But they don't
True.
log your data though.
well, but I guess it's like, what is malware, right? That's like the conversation there, right? Is being part of a botnet malware? Yeah, but at the same time,
kind of.
like, they're not stealing your data, but they are like wasting your data. Like they are, I don't know.
Nothing's free. That game where you shoot the little pig, it's not free.
Not great.
Wait, are you telling me all the money I spent on pig coins is worthless now?
No, those are totally worth something. They're NFTs. It's
Okay.
big.
Yeah. The year 2038, when the Unix bug finally hits, that's
I mean, to continue the Jurassic Park, analogy, some things are a T-Rex trying to eat your Ford Explorer, and some things are just, little brontosauruses eating in a field by themselves. But
Which one's trying to eat the lawyer on the toilet?
Ooh. That's
Velociraptor,
definitely-
which is that's
Velociraptor.
ransomware. Velociraptors
Yeah,
are ransomware.
Velociraptors move quick and they're smart, clever.
Yeah.
guys.
Before we go to the next story, does everyone know the lyrics to the Jurassic Park song?
Oh, God, you're gonna do it. You're gonna do it.
I'm gonna do it, Ralph. I'm gonna do it.
Don't
You're
do
a
it.
dinosaur. I'm a dinosaur.
Dinosaur.
We're all dinosaurs.
Yeah, go look up the lyrics.
I'm a dino.
Oh, Jesus. You ruined everyone's day. Thank you for
This is
stopping
why we
by.
usually have
Great.
Ryan running it. Not
I miss Ryan. I don't know about you all. but
I
miss
couldn't
Ryan.
resist the dinosaur.
Now I've got
Oh.
Denver the dinosaur song in my head. Denver the dinosaur He's my friend and a whole lot more.
More. Oh God.
All right.
Sorry,
Is
we
this
got
going on the
karaoke
Christmas
from the
album?
mind after San Diego.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're recovering from that. All right. So I've got the next story. I want to make it the last story. FBI is basically saying that business email compromise. I always find it interesting how they come up with the dollar amounts, but the FBI, I'm inclined to believe, is $43 billion.
Sorry,
and this
what?
$43 billion for business email compromise.
Is it like
And what's-
$1 an email? Like how are
Yeah. Is this
I think
every
they do
doing
this
it.
because a lot of companies that get hit, they do actually report to the FBI.
Well, it
Because
actually says 241,000 complaints were logged. That's so much.
I know. It's absolutely insane. And the thing that gets me the most about this is like the level of technology on this is not that high. Like a tremendous number of the business email compromises are just basically send an email and saying we need to reroute from this bank account number to this bank account number instead, and it's over. Or you pretend to be the CEO and you say we immediately need to transfer $100,000 over to this account. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about some really scary technical stuff, but it seems the attackers are doing just fine with like low-tech hacking.
See, I would never fall for that because I don't check my email. So
That's classic. Classic.
Are you? What?
So it could be business Twitter compromises then next year.
yeah, if they DM me on Twitter, then maybe.
Yeah,
I'll
they
never know.
tweeted me. Got me every
Daddy
time.
Elon's gonna fix everything.
I love that
Fix it
somebody
all.
said you could buy Twitter for that amount of money, but let's remember you could end world hunger like 5 times or 4 times over
Yes.
with that
yes.
much money. Like as human beings, our perspectives suck.
So one of the things I just did in the background here is I pulled up that report. It says $43 billion, 241,206. That's $178 per reporting. I can totally believe that. 'Cause I was on the phone with, I forget who I was meeting with, but they were telling me about internally in their organization. I won't say who or get into the details, but they were hitting marketing people or administrative assistants, and they were saying, hey, we've got this event going on, easy enough to look up that they're going to be in an event or they're going to have a booth, and I need you to go buy 200 Amazon gift cards. And they're using business email compromise because it's coming from one of the marketing people. And they're like, yeah, no problem. Here you go. Here's your 200 Amazon gift cards. Boom, done. And the only way they knew about it was later. Somebody said, oh, yeah, that was weird.
I think this is funny, Jason, because like a few weeks ago, I sent you a request. I need 3,000 copies of Backdoors and Breaches for the Ninja Conference. And he actually did confirm that with me. He was like, are you sure 3,000 seems like a lot? Because now we know what 3,000 looks like. It's a whole freaking palette of these cards.
But if you did that, you know we give them away for free, right? You don't need to.
Speaking of which, John, I do need 50 Amazon gift cards.
Approved.
Approved.
Oh my
Apparently-
God.
Apparently, I approve everything but Serena's notebook computer.
Jason, I just remembered something. Like this was back in 2019. Johnny, I don't even know if you know this. Jason messaged me because on stage at DEF CON when I won Who's Slide, you had said, oh, we're going to send you a gift card. And Jason sends me this most confused message. And he's like, John told me to send you $100 gift card. Why? I'm like, send me money.
Was that supposed to be the code word?
John's trying to like remember that moment and like actually the request and
Yeah, rolling blanks right now.
I do a lot of shit like that.
John's like,
where
I
it's
didn't
like,
do that.
I
And
need a
just
whole
gave
lot of
myself-
something sent, and if you're like, it's expensive. Spare no expense.
Oh, jeez.
Soon I'm going to be hacking on an iPad, so maybe I can use one of those gift cards.
iOS, it's the new hack platform. I don't
I was
know.
about to say, I heard from Tim Apple that we don't need computers anymore.
Tim
We need a $400 keyboard and an iPad Pro.
Yeah,
That's
it.
it.
You got everything.
That's all. That's everything. I'm so
It's
happy that this is the
one.
future we've created for ourselves.
This is the future.
I still go back to the Matrix and that scene where Agent Smith was telling Neo, this is the 90s. This is the pinnacle of your civilization. And I'm like, no way. Now I look back and it's like, Yeah.
Kind of.
Kind of seems that way.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. I'm tapped out for news stories because that's the only relevant things that have happened in the past couple of weeks. Only things at all that have happened whatsoever.
Nothing else.
Nothing.
Just wait till next
Nothing
week
else.
where we have a lot more.
I've got some Supreme Court stories we could talk about, but I've been told that we're not allowed to do that here. That's not. That's not.
And when I said allowed, you can do whatever you want, but I have to delete the
You have to
video
deal with that.
or not stream it. Yeah, or it's like
and that is a rule that we established at Black Hills Information Security in the year 1300, and it still does today because that's the way we roll here.
Well, there will be one day where I like, John, go ahead and say whatever you want, but you're like, are we
Today's
streaming?
not that
Yeah,
day.
sure, John, we're streaming. Yeah, everything's on. It's all working properly. It's fine.
You're holding up a potato for him to talk into. Right here.
I just have this vision that Jason gets talked to by other marketing departments, and they're like, "So the owner of your company, is he trying to go out of business?" 'Cause it kind of seems like he's trying to go out of business.
He's not trying to go out.
He's not trying. It's he tries.
All right,
everybody.
out.
Before you go, KTRU, thanks for following. Destroy Worlds, thanks for following. We are on Twitch. We are on Antisyphon's Twitch, and
we
be back.
will be back tomorrow. We
Yes.
will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. We have some address-based layout randomization goodness lined up for you all. And then Wednesday, we have a special couple of guest speakers. That's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll see you all then.
All right. Bye-bye.